All right, let's get cooking. Welcome to the latest edition of Chin Check Sports Radio. I'm your host, JD. I want to thank you all for taking the time out to join us. And as always, we welcome any suggestions, feedback, comments, and criticism, which improves the quality of our program, which ultimately improves your listening experience. Before we get started, I want to send all of you thank you for your tremendous support. People are slowly but surely finding out about who we are and what we do. They enjoy and respect the passion with which we speak. But as we always say here at Chin Check Sports Radio, we do this because we love it, as we are simply sharing our passions with you all as we continue to build our listening army to take over the world. Yes, some of you all are probably cussing us out because we are extremely late with our Dallas Cowboys coverage. Of course, here we at Chin Check Sports Radio are your go-to on YouTube for Dallas Cowboys coverage all throughout the year, with specific focus during the NFL season. So the Cowboys with a dominant 54-19 win at home on Sunday night against the Indianapolis Colts. Let's jump into our numbers here. Quarterback Dak Prescott, 20 of 30 attempts, 170 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, sacked 1 time. Tony Pollard, 12 carries, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ezekiel Elliott, 17 carries, 77 yards, and 1 touchdown. Malik Davis, 3 carries, 29 yards, and 1 touchdown. CeeDee Lamb, 5 catches, 71 yards, and 1 touchdown. Michael Gallup, 4 catches, 23 yards, and 2 touchdowns. On the defensive side, Donovan Wilson, 11 total tackles, 9 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for a loss. Deron Bland, 8 total tackles for solo. He has been playing very well. Jaron Kearse, 7 total tackles, 7 solo, 2 tackles for a loss. Osa Odighizuwa, 5 total tackles, 3 solo, 1 sack. Big Jonathan Hankins, 5 total tackles, 3 solo, 1 tackle for a loss. Anthony Brown, 3 total tackles, 3 solo. Damon Clark, 3 total tackles, 2 solo. DeMarcus Lawrence, 3 total tackles, 1 solo. Big Neville Gallimore, 3 total tackles, 1 solo. Anthony Barr, 2 total tackles, 2 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for a loss. Malik Hooker, 2 total tackles, 2 solo. Kelvin Joseph, 2 total tackles, 2 solo. Israel Mukuamu, 2 total tackles, 2 solo. Carlos Watkins, 2 total tackles, 1 solo. Sam Williams, 2 total tackles, 1 solo. Dorrance Armstrong, 2 total tackles. Folks, have you all peeped the name that I have not mentioned yet, despite winning 54-14? Micah Parsons, 2 total tackles, 0 sacks, 0 tackle for a loss, 0 solo tackles. So this goes to show the type of depth that the Cowboys have. When Micah Parsons, their best player, I'm calling his name out 10th, 11th, 12th down the line, and probably even longer than that. So it definitely goes to show you the type of performance that the Cowboys had. Now, we at Chin Check Radio, we do not gloss over wins, nor do we overreact to losses. The Cowboys started off very shaky in that first quarter. I believe Dak threw a first quarter interception, if I'm not mistaken. But the Cowboys did kind of right the ship by scoring 2 touchdowns in the second quarter. So going into the final quarter, the game was 21-19. Then the Cowboys had an offensive explosion that was fueled by turnovers by the defense, scoring 33 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. We definitely want to give a shout out to Malik Hooker, playing against his old team, having a return fumble for a touchdown. Again, played very well. We just read out his defensive numbers, so we're going to give this guy all the credit in the world. I mean, what can you really say to the performance? I wish the Cowboys would not start these game off kind of sleepwalking. Again, they had the offensive explosion due to more of the defense versus anything what the offense did. It gave the offense a bunch of short fields, so it is something to keep an eye on. Again, Dak Prescott and the offense cannot sleepwalk at the beginning of games. Again, going to the home stretch of the season, playing against better teams, hopefully making a playoff push, so those type of things can happen. And you heard it here at Chin Check Sports Radio. So going forward, the Cowboys did not escape this game unscathed. Anthony Brown suffered an injury. He's going to be out for the season. Now, myself and other Cowboys fans, and we'll go ahead and list myself as number 1, has been extremely critical of Anthony Brown since being drafted in 2016. We always felt that he never really played well and only had something of a decent season last year when his potential replacements were drafted, and that was Deshaun Wright, Kelvin Joseph, and Israel Mukuamu. But for some reason, Anthony Brown beat all of them out. Deshaun Wright was seen as more of a reach where he was drafted, so he was seen as more of a project. Kelvin Joseph, drafted out of Kentucky, actually thrown off a team from LSU, clearly has Division I talent. And Mukwamu out of South Carolina, there was a shift to move him over to safety. So really the person who Brown really had to beat out for the job was Kelvin Joseph. But again, something with professional players tend to play better when your replacement is sitting on the bench. So again, we never really forgave Anthony Brown for his prior poor play in previous seasons. He played decent last year. This year, he was giving up a lot of big plays. So now this is Kelvin Joseph's chance to step up, as he will be the other starting cornerback. Now, what's funny with Kelvin Joseph, we thought that in some of the action that he played last year, he really wasn't that bad. But again, young guy in his 20s, involved in a drive-by shooting. We have already discussed that in the Cowboys offseason. This goes to show why you worrying about hanging out and doing foolishness. You're not improving your craft. So now Kelvin Joseph has a chance to prove to the Cowboys that they were right in drafting him in the second round with questionable character and other off-the-field issues. He has a chance to prove the Cowboys right for keeping him after being in a car that was involved in a drive-by murder. So this kid is really going to have to show something. Dallas Cowboy fans, if Kelvin Joseph does not play well down the stretch, he needs to go instantly. Now, some people were getting on him about a touchdown pass that he gave up. We thought he was in decent position, so we're not mad about that. What we did have a problem with was a special teams penalty, because he was a special teams ace, or I'm not going to say an ace, but a contributing player on the special teams, when he got a ridiculous penalty where clearly there was a fair catch and he bumped into the Colts returner. I don't like stuff like that. That's a mental mistake, and those things shouldn't happen. So we definitely had our problems with that. So this guy now has a chance to prove his worth to the team. And if his kid is not cutting the mustard, get him the hell out of town. We don't have time to wait. We definitely want to give Deron Bland a shout out. This kid is playing very well. He has exceeded all expectations as a rookie, and we only hope that he can continue to grow. Some other Cowboys news kind of related to this week is the return of future Hall of Fame tackle Tyron Smith, who's recovering from injury. Now, we have stated this, and we're probably in the minority with this. We're glad Tyron Smith is back. Tyron Smith is a first ballot Hall of Famer. However, we're not rushing to get him back onto the field, and here's why. Now, yes, I know a lot of Cowboy fans will say, well, chin check, JD, you have a Hall of Famer. You can put the Hall of Famer back at his natural position and slide a rookie back to left guard, and you have the 5 best offensive linemen on the field. I will concede that argument, and there is no argument there. You are totally correct, 100% correct, totally justified. What I would respond to is this. The offensive line that was seen as a real concern going into the season has actually been a strength. Let me say this again. The offensive line that was seen as a concern this season has played very well. Tyler Smith has played very well. Now, he didn't have a great Thanksgiving game, but overall, the kid has played very well. Do we want to break the continuity with the offensive line? It's just a question. It's just a question. If the Cowboys decide to put Tyron Smith back in and let him play his way back in and thrust him in there immediately, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But I'm in the minority of what's the rush? The offensive line hasn't played well in his absence. So do we need to rush? Do we need, because offensive lines, they have to play in sync. And Tyron Smith, for all of his greatness, can never stay healthy, which is why this kid was thrust in that position, which is part of the argument why the kid was drafted anyway, was for the future when the Cowboys eventually have to move on from Tyron Smith. And this should be the season to move on from Tyron Smith, because again, we cannot keep having these injuries every single year. So Tyler Smith has been playing well. He's naturally aggressive. Yes, he will get a holding penalty probably at the worst time, which is really a lot of offensive lineman on the Dallas Cowboys, so he's no different. I like this kid. Again, Connor McGovern has played well. We have been critical of Connor McGovern. You still have a Jason Peters who can slide in at guard, who has played well in his limited duty. So the Cowboys have decisions to make on the offensive line, but it's something that's interesting. Again, we're not necessarily, beating the drums and say Tyron Smith has to be thrust back in immediately, because the offensive line has more than held its own. Again, only giving up one sack. When Cooper Rush was playing, they kept him clean. When Dak came back, they kept him clean. So, again, we're going to give the offensive line credit, but we'll see what the Cowboys do with Tyron Smith. Now, the Cowboys played at Houston, Texas this week. The one-win Houston Texans. Now, we're not going to look at it as a bye week because this is the NFL. Things change from week to week. We get it and we understand it. Ideally, in a perfect world, Cowboys second stringers need to be playing probably in most of the second half. That's how they should be. They should be running away with this thing by halftime, middle of the third quarter by the latest, and your second stringers are getting viable playing time. Now, what I do love about this Cowboys team, or this new era of Cowboys team, it doesn't seem to be that old thing of the 2-10s where one player went down, the entire team falls apart. When Tyron Smith went down maybe 6 years ago, the Dallas Cowboys traveled to Atlanta, gave up 7 sacks. That doesn't seem to be the problem anymore with this Cowboys team. This kid, Tyler Smith, has filled in quite admirably. We've seen plenty of times where when former linebacker Sean Lee didn't play, the defense was as open as a highway. Well, I just read to you that I called out Micah Parsons' name 10 to 15 players down in terms of defensive productivity against the Colts. That's a good thing. You're not relying on one player. Yes, Micah is their best player, but there are a lot of defensive stalwarts on this team that even when Micah doesn't have an impact, they're able to impact the game. So I like this version of the Dallas Cowboys where there's a lot of depth, a lot of quality depth. So again, we like this because we've seen this time and time when Ezekiel Elliott was out. Dak Prescott, he couldn't do anything. Now we have a capable back in Tony Pollard, who some will argue is really our number one back. I like the two-headed monster of a Zeke and a Tony Pollard. We have depth at wide receiver. We have depth at tight end. And clearly on the defensive side, a lot of quality players. Again, Kelvin Joseph has got to show me something, but Deron Bland has played well. Mukwamu has played well. The defensive line seems to be kind of getting a run game together. Again, only, to Jonathan Taylor, 21 carries for 82 yards, 3.9 yards a carry. Not bad. Definitely an improvement from what we've seen the previous weeks. So this team, I like the depth. I like what they have. I read an article where they call each other out, including Dak Prescott. Of course, hold each other accountable for poor play. Lastly, the Odell Beckham situation. Would Odell Beckham be a great addition to the team? Yes. Should we pin any and all playoff hopes on Odell Beckham? No. Let me say this again. Will Odell Beckham be an addition, a great, wonderful addition to the Dallas Cowboys? Absolutely. Should we be pinning our playoff hopes and hopefully a potential run during the playoffs solely on Odell Beckham? The answer is absolutely no. We have a lot of quality players. We have a solid defense. Guys that can create turnovers, guys that can make plays, studs seemingly on every level of the defense. We hope we get Odell Beckham. The Cowboys should do their due diligence in terms of medical evaluations to see when he can contribute. We're getting reports out that maybe his knee is not where it needs to be. Again, this is a guy who suffered a bunch of injuries, even going back to the New York Giants. So again, I believe he should be around hitting 30 years old, if he's not 30 already. Injuries. So again, not saying don't sign him. He will be a great addition, but Cowboys fans, don't pin your hopes on one Odell Beckham. Just don't do it. We'll see where it takes us. The Cowboys should do their due diligence. Find out if he's able to contribute. If not, we can maybe throw him a couple $1 million to $2 million for next season. But to pay him top dollar that we just had let Amari Cooper go because we couldn't afford to pay him top dollar, we're definitely not doing that with Odell Beckham Jr. fresh off of injuries. So definitely something to keep an eye on. And until the next time, it's Chin Check Radio signing out.